Hey everyone, today we are in the MH-60 Romeo mod and we are tasked with conducting some nighttime search and rescue. It is currently 2146 and we've got some winds and slight turbulence with scattered low ceiling clouds at 1000 to 1500 feet. Now this should make for some challenging flying. What you're seeing here is the flight deck of the cruiser CG-73 USS Port Royal. And we've been cleared to depart, so without further ado, let's get underway. As you can see, it is incredibly dark outside of the aircraft, and while we get bits of starlight picked up on our NVGs, there isn't much moonlight coming through to help us illuminate the ocean below us. While I'm not an expert at this mod or the UH-60 Lima parent mod in general, I've tried my best to dim as much of the cockpit as I could so that I could turn up the gain on the NVGs, but I'm limited because I can't find the dim controls for the main displays. For this flight, it's just something we'll have to live with. As we head out, let's talk about this scenario. We have one downed pilot somewhere between waypoint SAR 1 and SAR 2, which are programmed into our navigation system. Taniki44, who is the creator of this MH-60 Romeo mod, has added some cool SAR and CSAR items. In the past, the mod shipped with a couple of pilot models. One was for recovery from the ground and another was for recovery from the sea. He's now added pilots using the MS-2000 strobe marker light, which is absolutely needed for a mission like this. On top of that, he's added the use of green chem lights for the SAR swimmer, which makes it easier for you to visually track the location of them as they conduct their rescue. So tonight we're going to deploy the swimmer and watch him rescue the pilot if we manage to find them. I've got a few ships sailing around here and you could really see how dark it is tonight. The ship lights are barely discernible without the use of night vision, and as we continue to approach the SAR 1 waypoint, I'm getting a little worried that this flight will not be successful. A cool feature available for the pilot to be rescued at sea is that you can set in the mission editor a speed for them to use. This makes it realistic as you can now have a pilot drifting slowly in the direction of wind and currents, further complicating your search and rescue efforts. After some time elapses, we hit the SAR 1 waypoint and I start to head to the SAR 2 waypoint. And somewhere between these 2 points is a downed pilot who is drifting northwest with the wind at probably 1 to 2 knots and should be flashing their strobe. Now pay close attention for the next 20 seconds or so and see if you can pick up the downed pilot before I find them and zoom in. Looking back on this footage, I can see the pilot was in view for a while before I saw them, but hindsight's 20/20. What I thought would be the hardest part of this flight, finding the pilot, was probably the easiest thing compared to all the stuff happening to try and get the aircraft safely to a point where I could recover them. I did not have an appropriate understanding and respect for what it takes to slow the helicopter down and lower the altitude safely while operating in such a low light condition over water. It is incredibly difficult to judge the distances of things in this environment. Switching between night vision goggles and unaided view to see my instruments or attempt to see the water with more clarity and wider field of view was difficult to manage without causing the aircraft to get into some pilot-induced oscillation. Regardless, this was all a lot of fun trying it for the first time. I now have the landing light turned on, and Tanuki 44 has also modeled the rescue light on the underside of this aircraft, so we have that turned on as well. This should help us as we get closer to the surface of the water to judge distances without NVGs. Once we close approximately 200 yards from the pilot, the script that comes with this aircraft will have distance and bearing readouts printed to aid us further in closing. What is really cool about this script is as different phases happen, you get appropriate readouts of information. For instance, when we drop the swimmer, we'll get reports of their remaining distance to the pilot, and when we lower the hoist to pick up the swimmer and pilot, we'll get relative clock direction and distance to help us get the hoist into the correct spot. After we close the distance with the pilot, it's time to prep the swimmer to jump for recovery. There are a couple ways you can deploy the swimmer. You can lower them via the hoist, which allows you to get them in the water with the aircraft at a higher altitude. This might be preferable if the sea state is higher. The other method is to just have them jump out the door, which requires the aircraft to be at an altitude of 15 feet or less. Now, the reoccurring theme here in this video is that I did not appreciate how hard it would be to try and hover without any good fixed references. I tried to use the downed pilot as a reference, but it made me drift a little bit because the pilot himself was drifting along with the wave action, and it was throwing my hover off quite a bit. As I mentioned earlier, it is super cool we have chem lights now for the SAR swimmers, so we can see their progress heading out to the pilot. As they swim, the chem light is tucked under the band on their swimming mask, and when they're ready for pickup with the rescued pilot, the swimmer will extend the chem light out with their arm and signal us to come in and hoist them up, which is a great immersive touch. One thing I've noticed that you'll see here is when the pilot drifts along, the SAR swimmer can't intercept them, and I'm not sure if that is a DCS limitation or that's something that can be improved with the script for this mod. I'll definitely bring it up to the mod creator and see what the story is behind that. Either way, the SAR swimmer eventually pops up with the pilot, and we are signaled to come in for a hoist recovery. This hover was very difficult for me. I basically couldn't look at anything which would help me hold position, and I had to rely on my radar altimeter as well as the callouts of where the hoist needed to go. Now this is something I'll be practicing more of in the future, that's for sure. So after what felt like minutes instead of actual seconds, the hoist is complete and we've got both the SAR swimmer and the pilot back on board. Despite this, the danger is not over yet. Transitioning from the hover to slow speed and then on to faster forward flight in these conditions is very difficult. And we see it takes a few seconds of me adjusting my goggles on the climb out to get an unhealthy dose of spatial disorientation with catastrophic consequences. I've been doing a lot of fast hoist operations on various ships in DCS with this mod, and I thought doing something at night wouldn't be too difficult, and boy was I humbled by that poor outcome. I definitely have a greater respect for flying in the night over water, and it takes a literal second for things to go pear-shaped and a flight to be doomed. And this is something I'm going to keep practicing because it's tremendous fun if you like a challenge. Speaking of which, I'm making these short, quick missions to do things like hoisting from a ship or nighttime SAR, so if you're into flying the MH-60, keep a lookout for future releases, as I'm going to share these with Tanuki44 to add into the mod. And before I go, I want to wish you all a prosperous and amazing new year to spend with your loved ones, and I'll catch you on the other side. Bye.